welcome to issue 4, I believe it's 4, of
Yeah, I think so.
the HobbyHammer podcast, or vodcast, I suppose we should call it.
Vodcast, okay, yeah.
I'm joined today by Miles, little legend
Hello,
himself.
I'm trying a new camera angle. Today. Part of setting things up like this, I don't particularly like this camera angle because if I'm trying to inform you of something, or if I'm trying to teach you something, I need to be sort of like, you need to be looking up at me, so I have that master role. Right now, I'm subservient, right? You're looking down on me, so whatever opinion I offer has less value because you're looking down on me like a child. You have that subconscious thing to it. But you can see more of the studio. You can see my little fairy lights over there that I'm quite proud. You can see, I can show off. I'm also like a man of horticulture.
Oh, he's off camera at the moment.
Oh no, it's off.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, well, we can also see that you're an environmentally conscious man because you've got a bag for life down there as well.
Have I? Oh my God, you can see that clearly down there.
Yeah.
So all my old white dwarfs are down there. That I need to put into. Oh no, that doesn't send out the right vibe. That should just be like bare brick. And hold on, let me put myself in front of it. There we go.
But it was only when you turned around. But yeah, so today we have a few things to talk about. We've got Heresy Thursday with the Endryd Haar model.
That was quite a big drop. Yeah, it really spiked my social media post for that day was the Blood Angel army that we've just finished on commission. This huge goddamn commission. Did a really, I'm hitting all those positivity points. I put POD as the background track. Really good post.
Yes.
And then bang, Endryd Haar comes in, completely ruins the engagement for that one. But I mean, it's not a bad one to ruin the engagement. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
Chatting about that. What else are we talking about?
We've then got Stillmania, which was we're going to have a segment on Stillmania, that's it was based around Warhammer Fantasy 6, and just how you'd structure an army, but we're going to just apply it to any force that anyone might want to collect. So it's just a style of collecting, and what we think 20 years on, basically, from this being written. I think we both still like it, but what we have found in our own collecting that we change about it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then finally, I think everyone's getting sick of it, but I've been painting peasants and knights, and I tried out some of the stuff that Miles went over last week on underpainting.
You can't really get excited about peasants, can you? It's not like, let's talk about peasants.
I do get excited about peasants because I'm just really into turnip farmers and their ability to stave a goblin's head in, but probably not an orc's.
Well, I'll save that segment by talking about the new beastie that I've bought for my Warriors of Chaos collection, which is far more exciting because he comes with a massive axe.
Yes, and it displays your purchasing power, which is surely what we're here about.
Yep, which is all what Hobbyhammer's about. Our sort of like power as consumers.
Okay, well, speaking of our power of consumers, let's get into the Endryd Haar segment, because that is what will be coming up and on our, I imagine, purchasing tables, if not our painting tables soon. So yeah, the Forge World model, he's got a very dynamic pose. It's on screen now, Miles, so you can start blasting away at him. And I think it's something we're both quite positive about, right? I like this model.
Yeah, very much so. So he is, a little bit like a fan's favorite. Endryd Haar, who is he? Some people might not be aware of exactly who this character was. So he was one of the remnant forces at Iss5 3. He was one of the legionnaires chosen for death within the Warhounds or the World Eaters. Is that correct, or was he like a outsider element that we should have researched?
So no, I believe he was a World Eaters legionary that was like away from the main legion, so away from Iss5 3, and I think just off the top of my head, he actually missed out on the implantation of the nails.
That's correct.
So he was that far removed from from the main legion. So like
Yes.
properly fringe elements, and his main rise to prominence is actually all within being a Black Shield after the start of the heresy. He wasn't of note before that.
That is correct. Oh wow, the lexicon have already updated their entry with the miniature for him as well.
Well, clearly everyone's like fanatic about this model.
Yeah. So the sources, if you want to learn more about this character, Horus Heresy Book 6, Retribution, Black Shields, The False War, which is an audio drama, Saturnine, Black Shields, The Broken Chain, Black Shields, The Red Fife, which is an excellent story. I believe that's the one where he tracks down a World Eater apothecary who's doing all sorts of naughtiness out there in the middle of nowhere. And then Warhammer Community Heresy Thursday, which has this character. Okay, let's talk about this character. Initial impressions. What do you think about this miniature?
So the pose I really like. I do feel that a lot of the poses in Heresy models haven't been super inspired in the last... and I'm not even saying since Heresy 2, like for a while, they've not been...
I agree.
Since Pollux. Since Pollux. Where
I have to... so the Imperial Fist Praetor, the one swinging the sword, I think that's...
the bricklaying one. Yeah, the one that looks like he's laying a brick. He's got his trowel off to the side. Yeah, and he's scooping up some mortar to throw it down on the defences.
I haven't been around that many bricklayers to know that, but that miniature is
It went
excellent.
round as a meme, Miles. It went round as a meme.
Sourcing dynamic miniatures in the Heresy, I agree, is a little bit difficult. So having this guy like barreling, bowling towards you.
It looks like you can probably feel the weight that he's putting into that about to be uppercut to just like chin someone. It's like he's on a night out, everyone's had too many pints, and he's like, come here, you dickhead. Bam. Yeah. But you can sort of feel that weight within that model and how much energy goes into that punch.
Yeah.
In the fried chicken shop at the end of the night. Kicking off because he was first in the queue and someone else has pushed in front of him.
Yeah.
Boom. Now, another thing of note that I really, really like about this model, the battle damage within the armour. And I like it because it sort of confirms how third parties were showcasing the armour. I think this is the first properly battle damaged Marine that Games Workshop has done. And it sets a real nice precedent for the Black Shields.
I think,
and other
you're
bit
correct,
stuff.
I think. Yeah, so I was chatting to a friend about this miniature, who's a former Marine, and he's talking about, like, he's surprised they haven't done more battle damage Marines, especially like how messed up this guy's face is, like all the rivets. For a creature that spends 200 years in the most hellish combat zones imaginable, you'd think that they'd be more intensely damaged, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's between engagements, they just get everything replaced and shined up.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really follow from any of the stories or anything like that. And it's...
No, in the Night Lords trilogy, there's a portion where Talos has come back from a battle and a bolt has hit his helmet and has dented it. And when he takes it off, like there's heavy blood loss and he continues bleeding, which is a real bad sign for a Space Marine. And he has to have like most of his skull replaced. That level of battle damage that goes into a Marine, it'd be nice to see it reflected more in these miniatures, in the faces, in the armor plates.
So I suppose one of the flip sides of that is, because I agree, I love heavily battle damaged Marines, and that being modelled, I think, is a positive. I suppose from the perspective of the model designers, you can't really add it back once it's been taken off. It won't look as perfect as if you give a perfect Marine to someone, they can battle damage that. Whereas...
Yeah, I agree.
This is going to have the battle damage on pretty much everyone's.
It's kind of the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that.
So but it's nice to have, like, wanting that battle damage set like this. Yeah, that could be it. Like, just give us a Black Shields upgrade set with all of these pieces.
real messed up faces, broken armor plate. Yeah, I'd buy that. I'd buy the hell out of that. Other nice details about this miniature: the iron halo with the world eater like teeth. Now, I have seen a couple of commentators online, one in particular, saying that that doesn't make any sense because he was so far removed away from the Legion when they converted over to be in the World Eaters. Why would he have World Eater iconography? I think the teeth iconography was a part of the Warhounds, I guess, collection of imagery that they used across the Legion. So I don't think it's that big of a deal, or if you do have that big of a deal with it, well, you take a knife, you scrape it off. And on the underside of on the sole of the foot, there's also World Eater teeth as well.
Oh, so there is a bit, but I don't think it's that glaring. Like there is enough. It shows his background because he was part of that Legion, but it's not overwhelming on the model.
Yep.
Like I mean,
Agreed.
A part of that is the armor mark, right, with all the studding, and you don't have the iconography on the left shoulder. You've got a little bit on the right. Hey, Miles. So Miles is having a problem with his camera unfocusing all the time at the moment. Yeah. It's meant for models, not for Miles's face. So so yeah, it's not. It doesn't scream it, and I think that'll be a good thing for everyone converting this into warmongers, especially because they're a very dynamic, like deep striking console, and do you know, like the whole point of the console is to be very aggressive, and I think this leans into it really well.
You know, he's freaking massive as well.
Well, that's
absolutely huge.
Yeah, and I mean that is going to be one thing. Then again, the Pollux model is really big. Once you have it just dotted about in a force, I don't know how glaring it'll be, but it is a worry.
So, but this guy, he was big for a Space Marine. It talks about like he was particularly big for a Marine. He had to have armor built specifically for him because he was so huge. So I'm glad that they didn't kind of like scrimp on the size of him. And I think he is closer to like true scale Marines. When you see people convert them up, I've done a little bit with my Black Legion using Terminator legs and enlarged torsos. I think this fits closer to especially when you put him next to a regular Imperial Guardsman. I think this is what Space Marine should be, the scale. But I mean, that's a whole other segment and argument in itself. I like that they didn't scrimp on the chonkiness of the character. I really enjoyed just the sheer girth of this dude.
Yeah. So my reservation is there's no reservation about it actually representing Endryd Haar. I'm just thinking of the conversions that will come from this model, because how many of us are going to use actual Endryd Haar versus I really want this pose armor type, the fist being different than all the other fists out there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it will mix into our forces completely fine. I mean, it's no limited edition like Mark 5 standard bearer that just looked entirely out of place. And I think the dynamism will hide it and meld it into people's forces more.
So even with our conversation now, we're starting to talk about how people can use it. We're starting to talk about how it could be converted, how bits could be used. That's a real positive sign that this kit is so good that it's a standalone piece, amazing, but you're already seeing what it could become in different circumstances. I think this is one of the better releases since the re-release of the Horus Heresy in characters of this scale. I'm hoping, what's rumoured coming up at Tybalt Mar and, Little Horus, Aximand.
Yeah.
I hope they are of similar quality to this, because this is a stellar miniature.
Yeah, I think the last one that I was happy with, or like this, as happy as this with, is actually the Imperial Fist Castellan Terminator. Like, that's one that I've seen a few conversions of that I thought looked really good.
The first one or the second one?
the second one where he's got like the Archaeotech fist,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got like the
Yeah.
cloak and fur over
Mm-hmm.
the top. That's like I was really happy with that model with its possibilities for
Mm-hmm.
conversions,
Yeah.
and I think this is another one like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I agree. Just all round stellar. Oh, drawback of the miniature, the gun. So I've seen a lot of
Yes.
commentators say love the miniature apart from the gun. Now I've been playing a lot of Cyberpunk 2077, and this looks a little bit like Johnny Silverhand's gun. So I kind of like it because of that, but I can appreciate. I mean, in all the artwork for him, I think he's pictured with a Volkite pistol.
Yeah, but doesn't he have an Archaeotech pistol? Maybe.
I couldn't tell you. So let's have a look at some of the artwork for him.
So we're actually struggling to find. I've paused the camera and come back on. A high res enough quality image for it to be worth showcasing to everyone to demonstrate the Archaeotech pistol. But what we have got is Miles. You actually did an Endryd Haar a couple of
So,
years ago or a year ago. Like how long?
yeah, about a year-ish ago. So this is by a sculptor called Fumelfinger, or Bolter Juggernaut on Instagram. He's produced 3 versions of inspired by this character. It's on a Terminator base, as you see it on camera. It's a big, chunky miniature. But this gun is closer to the artwork that we've seen of it. And I think this would. I don't know why they've chosen to use more of like a Votan style pistol for him. I'm certainly not mad at the redesign. It's not like, oh, the pistol looks completely wrong, throw it all away.
Maybe they just had that
just
file open while they were also like, oh, it can't be bothered sculpting
Maybe.
another one. I've got that file open, throw it in.
Maybe, but the design on the art is so good. It feels like a missed opportunity not to have included it here, and that's like a very minor commentary, not a criticism, commentary of the miniature, because I think this is a like A-star S tier release from them. Oh,
agreed.
that'll be a segment. Let's rank all the characters from S tier down to F. Yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Well, maybe we'll do that next time. Let's do that next time. There's the colour wheel. There's the colour wheel. Everyone reference that colour wheel.
Oh yes, yeah.
So
yeah, okay. We'll put that up to like a social media vote as well. We'll see what our viewers think of like. We'll rank them all. Let's do it.
Yes, and you actually have done a painting guide just very quickly for this Endryd Haar, haven't you?
Oh yes, yeah. It's available. So if you look at littleLegendStudio.com, there are tutorials for every one of the legions, as well as a Lunar Wolf tutorial, Black Shields, and Custodes, all ranked under the Horus Heresy tab. If you go on there, this is all brush painted as well. It was a little experiment to see just how I could produce broken, battered black armor using nothing but a brush. So if you are looking for inspiration for the upcoming Endryd Haar release, please check that out. But of course, there will be a new tutorial as soon as I can get my hands on this miniature. And there will be a Warhounds version of this piece that I'll be making.
And when you say this is brush painted, so this is something that's come up in the Bretonians that I've been doing. Is this using the micro detailed?
Yeah.
The micro detailing for the cool.
Stippling essentially, to create texture. Because I think we touched on this last week that I feel like the more I progress as a miniature painter, the less it is about these long, languid brush strokes. It's more about rendering texture effectively in the scale, and a lot of that concerns itself with stippling. So the style of stippling you produce something to give the impression of ceramite or give the impression of leather, or so the brushwork style is different from the armor, say, to the skin tone of this guy, and it gives it rendering texture. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. So with that, shall we go on to the next bit of segment, which will be like how people can theme their forces, be that like it's in my head at the moment for the old world, but heresy forces, and it's something of how I've approached my heresy force. Even
heresy 40k anything. Whenever you approach a project, I think you should approach it from a point of uniqueness. Theming forces. I mean, that's the name of the game. Whenever you approach a project, you want it to be unique. You want it to be a representation or a reflection of you as a model, as a hobbyist, as a human being at that time. I think a lot of people of our age reading it, White Dwarf at this time, were inspired by Nigel Stillman, who was a writer for White Dwarf, and he had a very particular style and approach to army collecting. I'm not sure it's has influenced you at all and how you approach projects.
It's something that I read every now and then, and I use a lot of the bullet points that Nigel Stillman has put down in what everyone is seeing on screen now, in the Stillmania sort of thing. There's some things that I don't agree with. I imagine we'll get into it as we work through what his points were. But it's something that's like sort of underlies every collection that I tend to do, to the point where it's now subconscious even. Like that I just automatically do these things. Because I think it's a great way for people if you're playing, like if you're approaching this from a gaming perspective, I think it's really, really good, and it will get you to know the game's both core mechanics and your own army mechanics inside out, which is obviously good for winning games. If you're doing it from a narrative perspective, it will definitely increase the narrative of your army. And it also isn't going to be too large of a force if you stick to the base like rules of Stillmania, that it's unachievable to a high level of painting. So I think it crosses all categories, and by making a few adjustments, you can expand it from there.
Yeah, I think, as kids, you don't really think about these things. So this provided the first type of structure when approaching armies for me. So should we read them point by point to say whether we agree or disagree with them?
Yeah, so the first point will just be a very fast one, right? It's pick an army just under 2,000 points. The real core of this is pick to whatever, like the current size of gaming event that you're going to be going to. So Heresy will usually be 3K.
Pick an army.
Yeah. Pick an army. Pick an army. Just this one set army. And I think we'll just move through that one, right? It's just pick a set.
I agree. Yeah. I think that's a good thing. You have a set list of miniatures, you buy towards it, you can game with it at the end. I agree with that one. Write down an army, what you want to collect. Yes.
And I definitely think it's a good starting point. Write down the roster and never ever amend it again. Now, immediately, this is actually one that I disagree with. But it's the spirit of this here was to get to know that 2,000 points inside out and just improve with that single army and have a manageable project. And I think there's two sides to this. The manageable project, I agree with. I think when you do that 2,000 points of whatever size army, 3K for Heresy, 1.5 for 40K, you don't veer from that points level until you actually have completed it. However, I have found then myself adding to that army afterwards, but I think sticking with that initial points amount until you've actually completed it is a very good mantra to get into.
I think I agree with the spirit of it. But with my Blood Angels, I went through a very similar process. I wrote down an army. I had a pretty clear idea of what I wanted in my 2K list. But when I came to play with it, there were elements of it that simply I did not find enjoyable. So I swapped them out. I changed them. I moved things around. I think related to the Warriors of Chaos army I'm trying to come up with, I have ideas of blocks of what I want to do with them. So I know I want a infantry block, I want a monster block, and I want a cavalry block. That is my roster. Within that, I can change battle standard bearers, items, to make sure that it functions in a way that I enjoy in the tabletop. So I guess this comes down to I kind of agree. I agree with the spirit of it.
Yeah, Make sure it fits the background. I bet this isn't going to be a contentious point for us. And part of this, I think,
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
consuming as much media as you can about that army, and it fits in with even collecting that army in an excitement way. The more you consume the media of the background of your army, or even create like spiral it and create it in your head as you start collecting that army, the more you will be likely to finish that project and also enjoy playing with the army to tell its own story.
But related to the heresy, so again, the spirit of it, make sure it fits the background. There's an example I've been guiding a student through with siege wolves. So the space wolves are very known for their in-your-face assaulting kind of list, but legions were huge. And within the space wolves, there would have been a like more of a treadhead element to it, more of a siege element to it. So even though it doesn't fit the background, it fits the theme. He is using the theme and almost like pivoting and going the opposite way with it. So I think it's make sure it fits the background. I think I'd amend that to make sure you know the background and then do something creative with it.
I think it's. Do you know what? I don't even know whether that I agree with what you've just said, because I do think that force, that Siege Wars force, would fit the background. As you said, legions are massive.
Yeah, okay.
Now,
yeah, sure. I guess it doesn't fit the stereotype of the wolves. Yeah.
So he's having an armored company within a legion, I think, does fit the background. And I don't think this was your actual point. I think I was just making sure that the wording of it matched what we both
we've got to make sure the minutiae of the wording's right. Yes.
Are we writing our own? Are we going to write our own like Hobbymania?
Oh shit! Yeah, we should take on. Oh, sorry. We should take
notes
swear
on this. Don't
worry. I know when one of my students' kids watch this, I don't want to teach them any new words.
Right. Okay. Right. So I'll also try and keep it to a minimum then. So yeah, I think it's something that you've got to bear in mind as you're making your force, and that will shape your choices for the army. But also, that doesn't have to mean it's the worst army that you could possibly get, because most things can be like if you're approaching it from a gaming perspective, want a good army. I don't actually think they're mutually exclusive in the points.
Yeah,
you can pretty much always make a very good army that fits the background. So then collect and paint the army, give it 3 coats of gloss varnish, then never touch it with a paintbrush again. Right, so
hard disagree.
hard disagree.
Jesus Christ!
On the 3 coats of gloss varnish.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, because oh my god! I mean, depending on the kind. So if you go to Halfords, you buy like the spray varnish they got there. That's just going to completely annihilate any kind of subtlety you had on your miniature. I guess and this was written at a time of like predominantly metal miniatures, metal armies. So yeah, I guess I could appreciate the sentiment behind that. But most of the armies now are either plastic or resin. I know metal's making a little bit of a comeback with the old world, but yeah, it's predominantly resin and plastic we're dealing with. I would amend this to make sure that your storage and transportation impacts the miniatures in the least way possible. So magnetizing your base, 3 coats of varnish. Hard disagree. Hard disagree.
So I think that's more surely a spirit of it thing. I think the point of this bullet point is never touch it with a paintbrush again. And the gloss varnish is just to make sure you never have to go back to it. So I agree with you. Yeah. I did with my Valhallans that were metal that I painted or repainted a couple of years ago. I gave them like 3 coats of car lacquer and then like tried to dull it down with some other varnishes because they were metal. But I think the core of this is, and it's something that I tend to stick to myself, is never touch it with a paintbrush again, because it really completion of a project, just sort of box it off in your mind and to be able to just put it aside. And I don't think this is a hard rule as well, because it's how anyone wants to approach their own project. But I think it's quite a nice point to be able to just be like, this is a finished, completed project. It is done. I now have an army that is able to be taken to any event I want to go to. It's done.
So one of the big problems my students face is that when they start to go on tuition with me or they take a class, they'll notice that their painting style changes or jumps up, and they'll look back at their old miniatures like, oh God, I need to strip everything. No. If you take a class from me or if you undergo tuition, I always recommend building a new list, a new army, something new to have that very definitive break from the past. And I am a big believer in not going back and stripping your miniatures and changing them from a progression point of view.
Do you hear that, Phil? Don't strip your miniatures.
Don't strip your miniatures. No, don't strip them because they were a reflection of you at that time. They're almost like a little mini time capsule of you as a person, a painter at that time. Do new things. And let's face it, we've all got things in a pile of opportunity that you should be getting on with rather than going back and stripping old miniatures.
Well, and one thing is as well, like from a gaming perspective, it's the amount of times I see people strip an army and then don't have an army to play with that's fully painted. It's like, well, if you strip it, you no longer have that as a finished thing. Even paint the new army, sell the old army. Like, someone will find use for a fully painted army and you'll get some money. If you strip it, it's back to being bare resin.
Yeah.
And
if you do a good job of it, and the amount of time it'll take to strip that thing, just paint something new. Just how much is your time worth? How much is your hobby time worth? How much is your free time worth to you? Is it worth stripping those old miniatures, or is it worth just buying new? Next point.
Give every character and regiment a name. 100%.
Yes.
Agree. This is where we get into the agreement with Stillmania, I think.
Yeah.
So this is something that I tend to do, is whether you have a rule for yourself if they've got to do something cool before they get a name, or whether you just name them as you go along from the background. I think this is a really good habit to get into, because it means that you start thinking of your army as your army, because it won't mesh with the books. It will then start becoming your thing that you were attached to. And build a real connection with your army. I know it sounds sort of maybe weird to say, but it will. I find it massively increases my enjoyment of an army when I am telling the story of my own thing.
Do you remember that? Oh God, I can't remember the film, but there's a film with a kid in it who named all his G.I. Joe warriors, and he killed them off in his head, and he buried them, and he had like this huge like back history of lore associated with them. And it came to a crisis point later on in the movie where there's a big storm and they can't find the kid, and he's outside trying to dig them all up. Idiot. But yeah, okay. Like a little bit like that when it comes to the characters of your force. Yeah, it's not just a case of my marauders, for example, are just plain old marauders. No, they have been struck down with the curse of the wolfen or the wolf, and they have wolf iconography. It just makes them yours. It makes them personable. It makes them stand out. It makes the world more alive in your head and on the tabletop. So yeah, very hard agree with that one.
Yeah, and it fits back to the point of make sure your force fits the background, because by naming them something appropriate, or even within legions for the Horus Heresy, it could be something alternate to a main naming theme for a legion, because they all obviously came from Terror originally. Most have subsidiary worlds that they're named from, so they don't have to all be the names that you see in the books. But by being conscious of the background, you can give them something that is appropriate, and even if they're slightly different to the book names, it will then theme it to your own force and increase your sort of connection with it
and bring it to life. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Should we move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Do not even possess extra or alternate units. Just stick with what you've got. Yes, I agree with this.
Really?
Yes, stick with this, because learn to play with what you've got. Even with seemingly underpowered units, I think you should stick with them. So the temptation is to buy more than you need. And how many times, I mean, I've done this myself, with a project, you end up with extra units, with extra stuff that just simply doesn't get painted.
So I don't hard disagree with this, but I'd give it an addendum. I would
Okay.
say make sure you have that army finished. From a gaming perspective, it can be refreshing, obviously, to use new units.
Mhm.
And I actually think that once you have learned that initial force that you've picked 2,000 points, play it for a year, for 6 months, for a fair amount of time to get a good number of games in. You've already named all your characters and regiments, and they've got each something that you've done with them. Like, maybe the tactical squad has won you a game. Maybe a unit of peasants has held up the charge of a unit of Chaos Knights. I think, get a memorable story for all of your force that attaches you to those regiments. Increasing the amount of, like, your force from there, I think, that's exactly my approach. Is that then because it then ties me into make sure it fits the background for the next unit I collect. So say with my Chaos Army, I've got a unit of, like, I had my Chaos Army that was Marauder Horse themed. I then was like, right, I've played this army a lot. My Marauder Horse are doing well. That I've learned to use actually the Marauder Horse that are chaff against people's blocks. I want to change the army. So then it made me think about the background, what would fit in with this force, and I ended up getting units of Centaur to expand it into more of a horde. And it still fits the theme because I was already attached to the force following the other Stillmania things, but it allowed a refreshing change to the army that I was slightly getting sick of the Chaos Knights being a crutch for me to win with.
Okay, so how about we'll amend this to don't buy more than you need initially. Don't buy outside the initial roster, but play with what you have for 1 year.
Yeah, well, because I'd already played. By the time I added those Centaur and went over it was 2,000 points because I was playing 6th at that time. I was playing 6th 4 years ago when I expanded it. I'd already played like sort of 40 games with that army, something like that. So I didn't rush into expanding it. I'd already finished the rest of the army, and I found something that would continue my enjoyment and the storytelling of that army afterwards.
Okay.
So
I mean, there's a couple of points that kind of like feed into this one, like fight every battle with the same army and never change anything in it. Never vary or change your army in any way. Resist all temptation.
Well, I think these are actually, like, and I don't think we have to address them all as separate points, but part of it is learning your army inside out, as you say, with the weaker units. You can get use out of them.
Yeah.
And playing it, like, never change anything ever, like, never vary. It will teach you how to use those weaker units you might have previously written off, and then maybe you won't want to remove them from your list. But yeah, then we can skip over them. I think it's just worth saying that.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much the same sentiment. Fight every battle with the same army and never change it. Never vary and change your army in any way. Resist all it's all kind of the same thing. Yeah, I do. So initially, I do agree with these when you're buying things, because the amount of time I see people buy an army and they buy way more than they need, and the thing is to chop and change. But like you say, like, it's a good idea to be flexible in the end game to refresh the army and give you more of a challenge. So yeah, I think that's the way to go. That's the way to go. Okay, so make sure you have a carrying case that fits the army exactly. And I guess this is a way of like limiting your choices. I mean, I agree. Make an army carrying case that fits your army. Yep, sure. Otherwise, how else are you going to carry it around? But I guess it's a little bit like using one of those stomach bands to stop you eating too much. It's the hobby equivalent of that.
Yeah, I agree with having a good carry case. I think is what we'll have a good carry.
Okay,
case.
we'll stick with that. Yes. Okay, this one I really like. Fighting big games with just your 2,000 points. To hell with the odds. So you're going to turn up to a 3,000 point tournament with your gaming weekend with just your 2,000 points, and say like, no, to hell with you, buddy. I'm going to fight your 3K points to my 2K points. I guess the sentiment here is learn how to use the army, and sometimes it is fun to fight against the odds. I'd say on the whole disagree with this, because if you've agreed or your gaming group is playing like 2,400 through, or they play in variable levels, go acquiesce, be flexible enough to have the ability to play multiple points levels with your army.
Yeah, so I agree on the whole with what you're saying. Like, sort of try and match what everyone else is playing for the most part.
It's the social contract, right?
Yeah.
Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick and turn up and force people into playing against you, and with these nearly 20-year-old arbitrary rules that you read in the White Dwarf or you listen to on an issue of HobbyHammer.
No, but one thing I will say is I would like this, or when we release this.
Yeah.
And I'll do you know what? I might write it up for the end, so it'll be published as
I'm taking
a PDF
notes
at the end of this.
Yeah, I'm taking notes. We'll argue over the minutiae, the wording afterwards.
Yeah. I would say don't be scared to arrange a battle for yourself where the odds are against you, points-wise especially. Because not all of the memorable battles from history, but many, many of the memorable battles from history are unequal. The ones that you remember are the heroic last stands, or where the odds are against you and they end up winning anyway. And most battles are fought with unequal forces. It's sort of odd how we all play battles all the time with exactly equal points values. And actually some of the best battles, there was an Archaeon's Horde battle where you had double the amount of chaos as half the amount of your own force, and your ability to win wasn't do you survive, it was do you achieve your objective before being wiped out. And that is something that you can apply to just any game that you play, like obviously with permission of your opponent, that you're both in agreement of it, but setting your own victory conditions. Do I achieve this before the end of the battle can be very fun. And it will also allow your opponent to use more models if they like playing bigger battles. So if there's someone that's like, oh, I want to use 4,000 points of heresy all the time, and you're like, well, I only want to play 2005, play against each other and set yourself a different victory condition outside of the norm. And I think it's a very fun way to play.
Yeah, me too. I think the sentiment there is don't be afraid to take on more than you can chew battle-wise. Yeah, I agree with that, because it can be fun. Okay, so skipping over a couple of points because they're all pretty much the same thing. Like never ever change your list ever under any circumstances. Model every magic item on your character who carries it, no matter what it is. Ooh, I would agree with this WYSIWYG. Make it as clear as you can, and it gives you an interesting modeling opportunity as well. Yeah, I agree with this.
I would agree in main. It sort of changes in the old world where they've got a specific rule saying if we call a magic item an axe in the book and you want to use a sword, that's fine. But I do think your magic items should look a little special.
Yes.
Do you know, say I might be using an axe of battle versus a sword of battle, but I'm going to paint that axe of battle fancier than random axe from bloke down the other end of the block.
Yes.
I think the spirit of this more comes to make the magic items look more special. I don't think you need to model all pieces of war gear. So, if I have
like grenades and stuff.
Yeah. Who's modeling all the frag grenades? And I think having, especially if you're sticking to the 2,000 points or the just under 2,000 points, having magic item variation can be a bit refreshing without having to change models. And though I actually find myself using either no magic items all the time or the same ones, slightly because of this. Because I just got into the habit of it as a kid and don't really use magic items that much.
Well, as a Chaos Warrior, you don't need to. As a Dark Elf player, I can very much tell you we need to rely on that crutch to get over toughness 5 lords.
I would say play the army more. Because when you learn to win without the magic items, you'll have a much easier time playing with the magic items. Like, because it's your Dark Elf is strength 4, and then adding a lance makes it strength 6, which is still wounding any lord on a 3 with a -2 save. So you're missing out on at most like a -1 save.
But I guess having that reliability of having like a strength 6, say for example, it would allow me to enter combats that I feel like I could have like a more protracted. The magic items change the way you play fundamentally, especially in the Dark Elf list with so many like toughness 3, not as many wounds, weapon skill 7 is there. But I think you for a race that is magical in nature, it does rely on that. That's like a different topic of conversation there.
It's part of this bullet point, and I think not then being like, oh, my lord is going to destroy your lord in combat because I've got this magic item, then learning to selectively pick the fights and battles that you can win. So your lord might, I'm not going to put him in the block, he's going to go on a unit of cavalry, so then I can avoid your lord. Your lord can have to deal with a unit of, like, a massive unit of spearmen all game, and my lord is going to wipe out the rest of your army, because he doesn't actually need all those magic items to do that, and you've just saved yourself 100 points and just learned an alternate style of play. And I don't think it has to be something that we agree on.
Yeah,
but
I think this is just a rabbit hole to go down.
It's a big topic. It's a magic items versus not, I think, is an hour-long video in itself.
Yes. Yeah, let's park that for another.
But we'll get the wording. Everyone check the end of this video for exactly what wording we've landed on.
Yes. Yeah, so I like very roughly I said model and paint special weapons to make them stand out. But we will work on the minutiae of it. Okay, the next one. What you see in the army is exactly what you get. Take this literally. I think that kind of covers what we've been chatting about.
WYSIWYG.
Not everybody's like modeling frag grenades, but an assault marine should be an assault marine. It shouldn't look like a Terminator, for example. On the whole, I agree with that. But when it comes to like small minor things like additional hand, like if you haven't got like a pistol modeled or like a frag grenade, like who cares?
Yeah, and I think there is scope within this to change it. So like one of my Leviathans has a shield and a hammer. I'm not going to use him with a shield and a hammer. It's close enough representation to just use him as a Leviathan. Or do you know that this when taken too literally can limit conversion opportunities?
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think stuff should be a reasonable representation of what it is and have internal consistency within your own army.
Yes.
At least.
In that you've just nailed it there. Internal consistency. I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah. Internal consistency.
So always give your opponent the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. This is sports. It comes down to sportsmanship.
And it's part of the social contract. Playing a game, we want to have fun out of this experience. I'm not going to argue with you over whether your dreadnought that you've modelled is appropriate or not.
Who cares if all your opponents know your army composition by heart? I agree. Let them fear your army, and then even if you lose at the start of the Stillmania or your Hobbymania project, I think by the time you start winning with it, you're going to be setting the meta for your. Do you know, like, because people then have to deal with your army.
Yeah.
Because you will know it inside out, and they've been chopping and changing.
With this Chaos Lord I'm coming up with for Warhammer Fantasies, running with a demon sword, and there's very little else you can buy along. Like you can't get a ward save, you can't get anything. So that might make him quite vulnerable, but like I don't care. Like I just want to run around with a big sword and hit things with it as hard as I can.
Oh, Miles, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Chaos
as long
Lords
as it's
come with a
fun.
5-up ward because they've got
To do
Chaos
that?
Armor 5-up.
Yeah,
Don't
why
worry
not?
about. They've already got it covered, bro.
Already cut. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Who cares? As long as you're having fun with the list, as long as you're happy, as long as it reflects you. Yeah. Who cares if your opponent knows your army composition? Okay. The next one. Let the only surprises be your deployment and your tactical moves. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah. You don't want to pull off like a nasty surprise, like aha, you've revealed my trap card.
Well, it minimizes like feels bad moments, that doesn't it? As you just said, like it minimizes feel bads, and when you start winning with this army that you might have got a few crap units in, you've learned to start playing them correctly, like using your chaff as chaff, and they just when they die, it's like haha, but I have got this flanking unit of like blackguard or whatever that you've fallen into my trap.
Yeah,
and you can feel like a pro for winning with that army.
You know, I've done it myself in the last edition. My opponent had a big unit of Chaos Warriors in a forest, and I flanked him, and he couldn't gain any bonuses because they were disordered, being in the wood. I managed to take out like a 40-man strong, and I knew I'd be able to do that to him. And yeah, I felt dreadful after it because it felt like I should have said, "Oh, do you know this could happen? You might want to rearrange them." I could have got a much better gaming experience out of it. Yeah, so pulling off that trick just made it less fun for him and me. Yeah, so I agree with that. Let the only surprises be in your deployment and tactical maneuvers.
Yes. So then shrug off defeat, learn the lessons, and keep on practicing. Play for the fun of playing. I agree with this one.
I agree.
Is if you don't shrug off defeats, like it's a tabletop game. You don't just auto match with opponents. So
yeah,
and it's as you said, learn the lessons, especially at the start of a thing like this. Unless you've really like math hammered out the list crazily beforehand, which I wouldn't suggest.
Yep.
It's part of it is learning those lessons. Sorry, go on.
We've all had those games where we've turned up to a weekend and you just get a bad matchup. It's nothing to do with the army being cheesy or overpowered. You just end up with a bad matchup and you get wiped. It's just one of those things. As long as you can have a laugh with your opponent, get them to buy you a drink afterwards. Shrug it off. Be personable, chat, and carry on playing for the fun of it.
Yeah, and next time you see them, crush them with the same army you've just lost with.
Or key their car outside.
all appropriate strategies.
Yeah, healthy responses. And then lastly,
when you win, the excellence of your generalship will be beyond doubt. And I think this is the one to take to heart more than anything. If you have used underpowered units versus an optimized list, and you've won, that is when your generalship is beyond doubt. It's not when you've perfectly crafted a list that's won at deployment stage or list crafting stage. It's when your underpowered units you make overperform. And that's
this one does
the best.
This one does feel a little bit self-congratulatory. I can't say the meme or I can't make the action, but we all know what we're thinking. As guys, we've all tried it at least once doing this. But yeah, that does feel like a lot of these feel like self-imposed handicaps if you're going from a purely like gaming perspective. So with all of these self-imposed drawbacks, if you do manage to pull off a win, it's kind of like, haha, look what I've done. And it could be like your opponent just miscast turn 1 with his level 4 wizard and blew up half his army in 8th edition. Or it could be it could be like a myriad of different things. And you're kind of stood there like, haha, I am the best general. because you know my army list and I haven't changed in 5 years. Haha.
Yeah, but I think
It's a
you're making this into like actually saying like, haha, I am the best, and lording it
yeah.
over someone. Good sportsmanship still needs to be in there. And I'd say when you say it, you can just, or when you don't say it, you just take satisfaction in the fact that you have now learned to use an army, that you have imposed
So when you
handicaps on yourself. I think you can take satisfaction in that, but that doesn't have to be like slapped the dick in the face of the opponent. You can just be like,
read
oh,
that
success. The excellence of your
last bit.
generalship will be beyond doubt. That's surely that's surely
So
not.
I want you to read that last bit, but with sort of like an Alan Partridge inflection.
Well, you do it. You do what you were imagining.
When you win, the excellence of your generalship will be beyond all doubt.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like.
That's
true. It's totally
inside,
true.
That's a maniac inside their own head, which I'm perfectly comfortable with. Rather than like that doesn't have to be like because they know it. I don't have to say it. Like that. Mm-hmm. That's just my own absolute lunacy inside my own head. Versus being like, fuck you, I won. Like, yeah, I don't think you have to display that point to take satisfaction in winning with the army that you have.
Yeah.
Because also, everyone that you tell these, like, limitations to, like, in the actual limitations way, any that you tell the limitations to is going to go, it's a game, bro. Like, because that's the flip side to it, is you have done this to yourself. So I think you should take satisfaction to yourself, but also no one else gives a fuck.
You go on a night out, you know, you're wearing bad clothes and you haven't showered and like you haven't brushed your teeth. So you like set all these limits on you. Like, I'm not going to be able to get off with anyone tonight anyway, you know, and you've somehow managed to pull it off. Like, aha! When you do this, my excellence of generalship will be beyond all. And you talk about Warhammer all evening and how you only pick armies under 2,000 points and you write it down on the roster and you never amend it again and you still manage to cop off with someone.
I would not say that, so long as you don't start talking about it to someone, I don't think this would have a negative impact on your ability to go to a club.
Right, we'll try it. Next time you're down, we'll go on a night out and we'll...
I am now
well, bear in mind, you're about to be married.
I'm forbidden from this now. So...
Well, yeah, are you married or you're about to be married?
Not in... We're married in Taiwanese cultural ways.
Right.
Not in
yes.
UK legal ways.
Yeah.
Because we had to translate the document like 4 times to get married in Taiwan.
Yeah. But either way, you're committed. Like, I'm married.
But it means I can just not have to prove what I've just said. And just get away with saying it, right? So...
Yeah, there you go. Let's try it out. Let's put the theory to test. Okay, so that's Stillmania. Those are the rules for army collecting. And if you did want a little bit more insight and into this man's character, Nigel Stillman, there's an excellent blog that I think will be listed below called Give Me Lead. And it lists a whole article in there for the quest for Stillmania. And it let me just read the beginning portion of this article because it resonates even today. There is more than one way to play Warhammer. Not many people know this. Most of the games I hear about are being played seem to be stereotyped and predictable. The reason for this, I can tell you now for certain that it's not the game or the rules. And that's a direct quote from Nigel Stillman's article. The epitome of Warhammer. The epitome of Warhammer, or does fun still exist? So you could go read that on that website, and it's a rip-roaring good time.
Are you saying that? Are we flipping and saying that you shouldn't do anything about Stillmania? Because that makes him sound like an absolute maniac.
I don't think you should talk about it to women in nightclubs.
I don't think you should talk about it to men anywhere.
to men in nightclubs
Well,
either.
it's
Yeah.
because I think this is a personal thing rather than something you should impose on everyone around you.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bit like a gaming challenge because like a lot of gaming channels I see, like Pokemon run throughs, like I'm not going to use, or when one of my Pokemon faint, he's dead and I can't use him again in the game. It's kind of like these self-imposed rules to just give you a little bit more of a thrill, more of a challenge. But again, when we started collecting, I looked at this, and this was the only kind of structure or article talking about this thing, this how to approach building and painting an army. And this was for me at the golden time of White Dwarf, because alongside this, they also had the Tale of Four Wargamers, the very first challenge. So you had you could see how a more tournament-focused player would approach army collecting, more of like a painter. You had Paul Sawyer, who's like a little bit of both. And then you had the Stillman articles alongside it. So it was like a very heady time. And I think it's weird how much it's informed my own collecting practices over the years, and all these sort of like subconscious things that go through my head and how I approach projects and how I manage to get them over the line. So that was Stillmania. Max, your closing thoughts?
No, I think I think it's all been said, right? It's across the article. What I will do is type this up, and me and Miles will argue about specific wordings, and we'll plaster it all over Instagram and and I'll put it at the end of this video as well, so you can see where we actually end up landing on the Hobbymania approach.
Yeah, Hobbymania. Okay, yes, there we go. We'll rebrand it. Out with the old, in with the new.
Yes.
And then perhaps in 20 years' time, a couple of other dudes can rip our suggestions apart.
Yeah. So with that, we'll get on to like what have we been doing since last week, and that'll be for me talking a little bit about the stuff that we went over last week, with the painting demonstration that you did on underpainting, and like approaching from there. What have you been doing first, though, Miles? Because I imagine everyone's
So
sick of
I'll go
presents,
first.
as I said.
Yeah, because I haven't really done that much this week. I've been catching up from Canada, finishing off commission work, finishing off projects, trying to get my website to work again, punching holes in my wall because I don't know anything about that stuff. The council asking me for money because that's what they do.
That's their job.
I can't swear on the show. I can't swear on the show. But I did do a little bit of purchasing. I bought this thing. I don't know the name of it, but it's a gorgeous, gorgeous miniatures from the Chaos Dwarf range. And I wanted to have this because it is a cool miniature. But I didn't realize just how big it is. So when we compare it to like an Emperor's Champion
Have you got a
the
cavalry
classic
model or something that we can put it next to?
got even better. There you go.
Okay, so fairly large. So it's a bull centaur, and I'm just going to call it a shagoth because that'll be the
Shagoth.
closest thing. If you're doing a chaos army, that's probably the thing that you'll end up using it as. Because it's too big to be a centaur champion, a warhoof.
Oh,
The centaur champion is called a warhoof, and this is definitely too big to be used as one of them.
Yes, so I'll be. So this will be the general for the beasts portion of my Warriors of Chaos army. But I mean, you're just looking at bare resin there. It's not particularly that interesting. I had a bit of downtime. I've put it together. It's all on track to finish my pledge at the end of the month. Max, over to you. What have you? Because what you've been doing has been far more interesting with those turnip sniffers.
I've been doing a couple of things. So what I've been working on is shock horror everyone. My Bretonian knights and peasants. So last week we were talking about basically underpainting and starting with sort of a brown undercoat. Oh, it was the specific advice to me. And brush painting the army. So I then on that Friday ended up being like, okay, I'm gonna pre-shade the model with an airbrush and then try and do some bits with an airbrush. Completely failed. Every time I shaded up from that brown and then put any sort of colour over the top for the pre-shade. Just completely destroyed everything. So I ended up then actually following through with what I wanted to do, which was brush paint the model. And actually I ended up being very happy with the result. I undercoated everything with the brown and then actually started from a mid-tone and gave all of the blue a mid-tone. So so it wasn't exactly what you'd said to do, but I found it ended up working into something that I ended up being happy with. And from that, tried wet blending to get the brown into the shadows, and then working up to a unified shadow and a unified highlight that'll be on all the models of bright ivory and a mixture brown that I ended up with that matched my enamel wash that I put on a lot of things. So that will hopefully tie my peasants into the knights with that unified brown that is on the rest of the model except for the blues and yellow here. And I was really happy with the wet blending. I've not done it in about, I bet it was 5-6 years. So just cracking it out in a couple of hours by getting it wrong a bunch of times as well, and then just practicing into something that I was actually quite happy with.
You're going to find the more you do it, the better you'll get. Unfortunately, by the end of the project, you'll perfect it just by the time you are finishing the project and moving on to something else.
Yeah, so I'm not, one of the things that I think is going to happen is this month I'm not going to finish my pledge. And that is something that I'm comfortable doing. So what I want to do is get the heraldic colour on all of my knights, and some silver, and that'll be like a minimal standard of painting on everything, and something that when I then start blending the heraldic colours, like so on the barding and the shield and everything, I'm not going to mess up anything else. But I can base that model, I can sort of box it off, start gaming with it if I need to start gaming with it, and just spend a bit more time. I planned out my 2,000 points Hobbymania army, and it's only going to have 15 knights in, including characters, and 6 Pegasus knights. Because what I am going to get finished this month is a load of peasants. So my peasants, I've got up to point of, they've just been varnished before the enamel wash that's going over them, that will then tie them into the unified shadow on the knights. And then I'll do some highlighting over the top, which is something that I don't tend to do on the models, just to bring a bit more vibrancy back into them. And the picture up on the screen now is my peasant block with all their separate shields that I've got transfers from Little Big Man Studios, which are just all separate transfers for specific shields. These are the Victrix ones from the late Anglo-Danes. And I really like how the unit's coming together, actually, with all the different colours on the shields of the peasants. Too. But yeah,
it's recognisably Warhammer. It's recognisably Warhammer, but one of the big problems I have with units like this is that you feel like you're painting the same miniature 30, 40 times. But by doing this, it just you can see like there's joy in each miniature. There's enjoyment there. I'm sure it breaks up for you as well.
Yeah. So what I've been doing is painting the peasants and I was like, right, I'll get all the base colours on the peasants, and then I can reward myself with doing not all of the knights, but the heraldic colours on one knight. And next I'm going to put all the transfers on, because this is only like half the peasants that I'm doing this month. And then I'm going to reward myself by doing the heraldic colours on a second night. And then by the time I've got all the heraldic colours and peasants done, I'll just box off the silvers on the knights, and that'll hopefully complete to a minimal standard the painting. And then next month I can put overlapping cross weaves on the knights for like working into the heraldry and barding, and just because I've been really enjoying a more in-depth painting to this force. Like it's something I've enjoyed speed painting and the satisfaction of knocking out an army and the process of like a speed paint in the last few years. But the actual individual brushstroke I've been really enjoying by just allowing myself the time to like try out wet blending and color theory. And...
I'm not sure whether you experienced this as well. A conversation came up with a student this week about spending time by yourself and how nice that is. I mean, having the constant bombardment of your responsibilities and the world around you, but when you come to paint, it's just you, and you're there for a half an hour if you're lucky, just doing a repetitive motion, and it gives you that it quietens down the voices in the back of your head.
When I'm alone and do repetitive motions, it probably doesn't take half an hour for me. I'm more around the 7 to 10 minute mark. But it's
I'm older than you, yeah.
No, but I definitely agree with what you're saying. It's therapeutic.
It's meditative.
Yeah, exactly. So that is where I am up to with the hobby challenge. And we've got
looking excellent.
2 weeks to go on the hobby challenge.
2 weeks. Yes. So if any people on the Discord are listening to this, you have 2 weeks to finish up your pledges, and then we'll do a big review of everyone's work. Some crazy good stuff on here. Jeez Louise. Yeah. Okay, it's been building up. I haven't looked in the past couple of days because I've been catching up. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So if you did want to join along the challenge, anything you post on social media, give it the hashtag HobbyHammer. We'll review it at the end of the month. Alternatively, you can join the Little Legend Discord. It's totally free. You can see in the link below how to join it. It's right at the bottom of that server. Really nice little community that we have in there, encouraging each other, gentle encouragement to make sure that we're all have like positive accountability for each other. And if you would like to know any more about the old world, have a look at, where you're watching this. But Max, how many videos have you posted up this week on Old Hammer Theory? Warhammer Old World Theory and army lists and that kind of thing. How many have you posted up?
So in the last week, I've posted 4 videos. I posted the Bretonian guide, Bretonian Arcane Journal guide, because it came to like a 3.5-4 hour video if I combine them. The Dark Elf guide, Warriors of Chaos versus Ogres, and going up on the Patreon tomorrow will be Warriors of Chaos versus Beastmen. And that'll be pre-release because Heresy is this. I've got to actually go back to some Heresy because it's been so long. Yeah. So he's
oh no,
videos.
Back to Heresy. Oh,
I know. Woe is me. Woe is me. Another game that I really enjoy and love.
Yeah. I can't wait for this new book. This new Endryd Haar. Yeah, I'm really I'm feeling the kindling again. I'm feeling the excitement.
There's a twitch
again. There's the twitch. Yeah, I'm trying to keep mono focused on the Warriors of Chaos because I don't want to be led astray. But yeah, this new book is, especially if they keep the level of characters at this level. Can't wait to see the next release. Okay, that's it.
It is. Well, I've just got one thing to shout out before we go. Is me and Phil are running an event. If you missed it last time, I'm sorry, Miles. I'm going to do it every time. We're running an event in June. I'm going to just look. So on the 8th and 9th of June, me and Phil are running the Old World event called Brewery Towns Burning. It's going to be a narrative event at 1750. Now, we've picked that because it will be the point that the Hobbyhammer Slow Grow has reached by that month. So it'll be a bit of a short month, but hopefully like the inclination to paint going into an event will be higher. But yeah, if you want to come down, it's not going to be super tournamenty. Actually, the opposite. It's just for forging a narrative of taking a caravan of trade wares to Cathay are raiding
I love
if you
that
were
narrative.
on. Well, that's it. It's just something. It's a mundane,
It's such a cool narrative.
caravan
Yeah.
thing, but actually will be like it's based on. There was a Mordheim supplement called Border Towns Burning that was just absolutely excellent, and if anyone like has played it, oh, it's just so good and so in depth with the background. So we'll be forging a narrative with that. I've already got the trade caravan sorted so that everyone, at least on the merchant side, the good side, will get their own like caravan vehicle of some sort, their wagons, and we'll be playing some narrative scenarios to tell that story. So if you're interested, there is a link below in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description. And that's my little plug done, Miles.
Okay, phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to learn how to paint gooder, go on the Legend Studio Patreon. We post up videos every week. We're finishing off the Fulgrim tutorial masterclass, and then we're going to do like a little pick and mix, student suggestions over the next couple of weeks before diving into the next masterclass. But okay, that's it. That's all the plugs. That's the show. Outie 5000. Thank you, Nigel Stillman, for guiding my Warhammer career. And
cheers for coming.
Cheers for coming.
That's it. See you next week.